Hello and welcome back. You're listening to The Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are going to do something that I think is arguably one of the most valuable things we can do on this show. We are going to challenge the way you perceive reality itself.
That is a big promise to make right at the top.
It is a big promise, I know,
Oh,
but I really think we can deliver on it. Usually, we take a stack of articles or maybe a whole book and we try to synthesize it. But today, we're doing something different. We're going in with a microscope on a very, very specific piece of source material.
right. We're looking at a text called Clearer Vision, Navigating Diabetic Cataracts.
Exactly. And on the surface, it sounds like a medical pamphlet you'd find in a doctor's waiting room, right?
It does. A little dry, maybe.
But we're focusing on one specific section. It's almost like a chapter called Episode 8, The Double Trouble. And the reason I say this whole thing challenges reality is because it deals with the primary sense we all use to navigate the world, our vision. And it explores what happens when that sense, that supposedly objective window to the world, starts to lie to you.
Lie to you is a really provocative way to put it, but I think it's spot on.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we tend to think of our eyes as, little cameras? They just record what's out there?
Yeah.
Objective truth.
Point and shoot.
But this source material makes a really compelling argument that our eyes aren't cameras at all. They're filters. And when those filters change, specifically because of a systemic health issue like diabetes, the reality we see changes right along with them.
And that's our mission for today, to really understand that connection. That's the double trouble in the title. It's this intersection of high blood sugar, diabetes, and the physical structure of the eye, the cataract.
And I just have to say, what I love about this source is how it does it. It moves beyond the dry medical jargon.
Right.
It uses this incredible narrative. We're going to meet a character named Grandma Rose, and this incredibly powerful analogy to explain some really complex biology.
Yes, the egg white analogy, we are definitely getting to that. It's a game changer for understanding this.
It really is.
So this isn't just about eyes, is it? It's about understanding how your systemic health, the sugar in your blood, has a direct physical impact on a very specific organ. In this case, the lens of your eye.
It's the ultimate example of how everything is connected.
Okay, so before we get into the heavy science of it all, because there is some fascinating biology here, I want to start where the source starts, with the narrative.
The story of Grandma Rose.
Grandma Rose, I love that they did this. They don't just throw data at us. They anchor everything in the lived experience of this one woman. And I want to spend some time just in with her situation because I think it's something a lot of people might recognize, maybe in themselves, maybe in their parents or grandparents.
It's very relatable. And it starts with a very specific emotional beat. It doesn't lead with a diagnosis or a symptom. It leads with frustration.
Yes. The text literally says Rose is frustrated. And it's not some vague existential frustration. It's pointed. It's specific. She's frustrated because she feels like she's losing control over her own environment.
Right.
But there's a detail in that first paragraph that just jumped out at me. It says, and this is a quote, "She just bought new glasses last year."
I flagged that exact same line. It's such a crucial, subtle piece of the puzzle.
Okay, walk me through it. Why does that one little detail matter so much to the whole clinical picture?
Well, let's think about the standard logic of vision care. For you, for me, for anyone. If you can't see while things are getting blurry, you're squinting to read a menu, what is the very first thought that pops into your head?
My prescription is out of date. Simple. My eyes got a little bit worse. Time for stronger lenses.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You assume it's what's called a refractive issue.
Yeah.
You assume the shape of your eye has changed just enough that the light isn't focusing perfectly on the retina anymore.
So you do the whole song and dance, you go to the optometrist, you sit in the chair, you do the better one, better two test.
Right.
You pick out new frames, you pay a few $100, you wait 2 weeks, and then you put on the new glasses and you expect the world to just snap back into focus. High definition.
That's the contract, right? That's the deal we've all made with our eye doctor. I pay for the glasses, you give me back my sight.
But for Rose, that contract was broken.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. The text makes a point of saying she got these glasses just last year. That little phrase implies a couple of things. One, that the degradation of her vision is happening way faster than normal aging.
Yeah.
And two, and this is the real kicker, the glasses, the standard solution, simply aren't fixing the problem anymore.
And can you imagine how terrifying that must be? You put on your brand new expensive glasses, you look out the window, and it's still blurry, it's still dim.
It would create this horrible cognitive dissonance. Your first thought wouldn't be, I have a cataract. It would be,
The doctor messed up the prescription.
yeah, or I blinked during the test, or these lenses are defective.
You'd look for any other explanation.
Right.
Or, as Rose does in the text, you start blaming the world itself.
Exactly. This is where we get to what the source calls the dirty window perception. Rose isn't walking around thinking, I suspect I have an aggregation of denatured proteins in my ocular lens.
No, worse.
She's walking around her house saying, my windows are dirty.
It's a fascinating psychological coping mechanism. The source describes her looking out at her garden, a place that probably brings her a lot of joy, or looking out at the street, and she is 100% convinced that there is a layer of grime on the glass panes of her home.
I just love this detail because it is so profoundly, deeply relatable. We trust our perceptions so implicitly that if the image we're receiving is bad, our immediate assumption is that the source of the image is bad.
You externalize the failure.
Yes, the window is dirty. The air is smoggy today. This restaurant has terrible lighting.
It is so much harder for the human brain to accept that the failure might be internal. To admit my sensory equipment is failing is a much, much harder psychological leap than saying, this window cleaner I hired is doing a terrible job.
It's a fundamental challenge to your sense of self. But the source, it drops the hammer on this delusion pretty quickly. It says very plainly, but the dirt isn't on her glasses, it's in her eyes.
Oof, it's in her eyes.
Hmm.
That phrasing is almost claustrophobic.
It is. It sounds like a line from a horror movie, doesn't it? If your glasses are dirty, you take them off and you wipe them with a cloth. Problem solved. If your window is dirty, you get some Windex and paper towels. Problem solved.
But if the dirt is inside your eyeball,
You're trapped. You are permanently trapped behind it.
you're looking at the world through a dirty filter that you can't remove. And this leads us to the specific quality of the visual distortion Rose is experiencing. It's not just a blur. The source uses a metaphor here that I think is just brilliant.
The old photograph.
Yes, says she feels like she is living in an old photograph.
Okay, let's really dwell on that for a second. Let's unpack that.
Yeah.
When you think of an old photograph, not from the 80s, but like a sepia-toned picture from the 1890s, what are the key visual characteristics?
Okay, well, the first and most obvious one is the color. It's yellow, or sort of brownish yellow. The color is gone.
Right. No vibrant blues or reds?
None. Second, it's dim. The dynamic range is just crushed. You don't get bright, sparkling whites, and you don't get deep, inky blacks. Everything is sort of pushed into this muddy middle ground.
And third.
The detail is soft. It's not crisp and sharp. It's a little fuzzy around the edges.
And the source specifically says the world looks yellow and dim to her. Now, I want to challenge this because it's not intuitive. When I think of cataracts, or just bad vision in general, my mind immediately goes to blur. I think of taking a camera lens and twisting it out of focus.
That's what most people think.
But I don't naturally think of a color shift. Why yellow? Why is everything yellow?
That is the specific signature of this type of cataract, the kind that's often accelerated by diabetes. It's not just that the lens is getting cloudy, it is chemically changing color. The proteins in the lens, these wonderfully organized little structures, as they break down and clump together due to the sugar, they essentially oxidize. They rust in a way.
Like metal rusting.
It's a similar chemical process, and that process turns them from clear to a yellowish-brown color.
So it literally becomes a colored filter, like putting a yellow gel over a stage light.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Or putting on a pair of those, blue blocker sunglasses with the yellow lenses. Everything you see, your white coffee cup, your spouse's blue shirt, the green grass outside, is being filtered through that permanent amber tint.
Wow. Which explains the psychological feeling of living in an old photograph. It literally pushes the present moment into the past. It strips the vibrancy and the life out of everything you see.
It does. It has a real psychological effect. If the world constantly looks dim and yellow, it's going to feel sadder. It's going to feel older, less immediate, less alive.
And this brings us to the practical day-to-day impact. It's not just about the mood of the lighting in your life. It's about simple functionality. The source moves from that general dirty window feeling to a very, very specific test case.
The needle test.
She still can't thread her needle. Now, I have to admit, I have 20/20 vision, and I find threading a needle to be incredibly frustrating. It is objectively a difficult task.
It is. It's difficult by design. But that's precisely why it's the perfect test case here. Threading a needle is arguably one of the highest friction visual tasks a person can perform in their daily life.
But break that down for me. Why is it so demanding?
Think about all the different visual systems that have to be working perfectly, in concert. First, you need sharp, distinct acuity. You have to be able to see the tiny, tiny eye of the needle.
Which is already hard enough.
Right. Second, you need excellent depth perception. You have to align the tip of the thread in three-dimensional space forward, backward, up, down to hit a moving target. And third, you need high contrast sensitivity. You need to be able to clearly distinguish the silver of the metal from the background and the thin thread from the silver of the metal.
And if you're Rose living in that old photograph,
You fail on all three counts. The dimness kills your contrast, the softness, the blur kills your acuity, and the general haze disrupts your depth perception. Rose isn't just annoyed that she can't sew. She is physically incapable of performing a task that requires that level of visual precision.
and for someone from her generation especially, threading a needle might represent so much more. It could be a hobby, a passion, mending clothes for her grandkids, a way she contributes and feels useful.
A sense of purpose.
Losing that isn't just, oh, I can't sew anymore. It's, I can't do the things that make me me.
It's a profound loss of agency. And it happens so gradually, so insidiously. First, you stop trying to sew at night because the light is bad. Then you stop trying on cloudy days. You keep making these little bargains with the condition until one day you realize you can't do it at all anymore.
Speaking of these subtle changes, there's another specific detail in the actionable takeaways section of the source that I found absolutely fascinating, and it connects directly back to that yellow filter we were just talking about.
Ah, the blue socks phenomenon.
Yes, blue socks look gray. Now, on the surface, this sounds like such a trivial thing. Oh no, I mismatched my socks, what a disaster. But physically, why is this happening? Why specifically blue? Why not red socks looking pink or something?
This takes us all the way back to high school physics class and the visible light spectrum.
I knew you were going to make us do physics at some point.
Just a little bit, I promise. So, visible light is a spectrum of wavelengths. On one end, you have red and orange light, which have long, lazy wavelengths. On the other end, you have blue and violet light, which have very short, high-energy, bouncy wavelengths.
Okay, I'm with you so far. Red is long, blue is short.
Now, remember, you have this yellow filter, the cataract, sitting right in front of your retina. Well, yellow filters are physically notorious for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
They absorb blue light. Because that blue light has that short, scattered wavelength, it gets trapped and blocked by the dense, yellowed, disorganized proteins of the cataract.
So the blue light from the sock literally cannot get through the dirty window of her eye.
Barely any of it gets to it. It gets absorbed by the yellowed lens or it gets scattered away. But the red light, the longer, more powerful wavelengths, they can punch through that yellow haze a little bit better.
So if I'm Rose and I'm holding up a pair of, say, bright royal blue socks,
Your eye is physically filtering out almost all of the blue information from the light hitting the sock. So what's left? What does your brain get? It gets a very dark, muddy, neutral tone. And to your brain, that registers as dark gray or even black.
that is just wild. So you can have this scenario where Rose is standing in her bedroom holding a blue sock. Her husband is standing next to her looking at the same sock and says, "That's a nice blue sock." And she looks at him and says, "What are you talking about? It's gray."
And she isn't lying. In her reality, based on the incomplete data reaching her brain, it is gray.
It's a complete breakdown of shared reality over something as simple as a sock.
It is. And it's so insidious because you don't wake up one morning and say, hey, where did all the blue in the world go? It fades out over months, maybe years.
Yeah.
You just slowly get used to a world that is less and less vibrant.
It's like the volume knob on color is being slowly turned down, but only for the cool end of the spectrum.
A perfect way to put it. And that leads directly to the other big symptom that's mentioned, the ever-increasing need for more light. The source says, needing brighter and brighter lights to read.
This one feels intuitive if we stick with the dirty window analogy. If my car's windshield is covered in mud, I need the sun to be brighter, or I need to turn on my high beams just to see the road.
It's the exact same principle. The cataract lens is physically blocking photons. A certain percentage of the light that enters the eye is just not making it to the retina, so the brain sends up a signal, hey, it's dark in here, I can't see, turn up the gain.
So you turn on the overhead lights, then that's not enough, so you get a dedicated reading lamp and put it right next to your chair.
Then you find yourself angling the book to catch the light just right. Then you're using the flashlight on your phone to read a menu in a perfectly well-lit restaurant.
You're desperately trying to brute force more and more light through this ever-thickening blockage.
But eventually, physics wins. You simply cannot outlight a dense cataract. You can shine a giant spotlight on a brick wall, but you still can't see what's on the other side.
That is a pretty depressing image. So, okay. We've painted this picture of Rose's world. It's dim, it's yellow, it's fuzzy, it's increasingly colorless. We understand what she is experiencing. But we haven't really dug into the double trouble part yet. The why.
The mechanism.
Yes. Why is this happening to her lens in the first place? For that, we need to go a little deeper. We need to look at the anatomy.
This is section 3 in our source material, the anatomy and the mechanism. And it starts with a really simple, beautiful baseline. It says, the anatomy. The lens of your eye should be clear, like a window pane.
Like a window pane. Simple enough.
It sounds so simple, but biologically, achieving that perfect transparency is a flat-out miracle of engineering.
How so? What's so miraculous about it?
Well, think about literally any other part of your body. Your skin, your muscles, your bones, your organs, they're all opaque. You can't see through your own arm.
Thankfully, no.
Right? But the lens of the eye is made of cells. It's packed full of proteins, just like a muscle. But unlike a muscle, it has to be perfectly, utterly transparent. And to achieve that, the proteins inside the lens cells, they're called crystallins, have to be arranged in this incredibly precise, almost crystalline lattice structure.
So in a healthy eye, it's like these proteins are standing in perfect formation, like soldiers on parade.
That is the perfect metaphor. Perfect rows, perfect columns, all evenly spaced. This incredible organization allows light to pass straight through them without scattering or bouncing off. That's what transparency is. On a physical level, light passing through something without being scattered.
Okay, so we have this beautiful, pristine military formation of proteins, the clear window pane. Now enter the antagonist.
High blood sugar. The double trouble.
And this, I think, is the connection a lot of people struggle with. I mean, I eat a donut, my blood sugar goes up, that makes sense. But how on earth does that sugar get from my stomach into my eye? An eye isn't a digestive organ.
No, but your eye is filled with and nourished by fluids, specifically the aqueous humor, that are derived directly from your blood plasma. So if your blood is consistently full of excess sugar or glucose, then the fluid that is constantly bathing the inside of your eye is also sugary.
So the lens it's literally marinating in simple syrup.
That is a very sticky and accurate way to put it, yes. And this is where the destructive chemistry begins. The source says very simply, high blood sugar affects the proteins in the lens. They clump together.
Clump, that's the verb they use. It's the key action word here.
It is. In the scientific world, this process is related to something called glycation. You don't need to remember the word, but the concept is simple. The sugar molecules are sticky, and they start to bind, almost like glue, to the protein molecules.
Okay, so let's go back to our military formation of soldiers, our perfectly organized proteins.
Imagine that perfect grid of soldiers, standing at attention. Now, imagine you fly over them in a helicopter and just dump gallons and gallons of superglue all over them.
It would be chaos.
Total chaos. They'd break formation, they'd start sticking to each other, they'd fall over, they'd huddle up into big, messy, disorganized groups, they'd tangle.
And now, when the light tries to march through that formation in a nice straight line...
It can't. It hits these big, sticky clumps of protein and sugar, bounces off in all directions, it scatters. And when light scatters, our brain perceives that as cloudiness. It perceives it as opacity.
So the cloud, in a cloudy lens, in a cataract, it isn't some foreign object that gets in there. It's not a film or a tumor. It's your own body's proteins, just tangled up and creating a physical blockage.
Exactly right. It's a structural failure at the molecular level caused by the chronically unhealthy chemical environment created by the diabetes. And this brings us to, I think it's the absolute highlight of this entire source text. It's the core analogy that explains this irreversible change better than any science textbook could.
It's time for the egg analogy.
I suspect this is the part of our deep dive that people will be thinking about while they make breakfast tomorrow morning.
I know I did. It's unforgettable. So the source asks us to think of an egg white.
Let's all do it. Let's visualize it right now. You crack a raw egg into a clear glass bowl. What does the egg white, the albumin, look like?
It's clear, it's transparent, it's thick, kind of viscous and goopy, but you can see the bottom of the bowl right through it.
Just like the healthy lens of the eye, it's a clear, protein-rich fluid that lets light pass through without obstruction.
Then the source says, when you apply heat, it turns white and opaque.
And we've all seen this happen 1,000 times. You pour that clear, goopy stuff into a hot skillet.
And the change is almost instantaneous. It goes from clear to bright white, becomes solid, and you definitely cannot see the bottom of the skillet through it anymore.
And here is the punchline. The source says, high sugar acts like that heat. It cooks the lens of your eye.
Cooks. I have to be honest, when I first read that single word, I had a visceral reaction. I thought, okay, that's a bit dramatic, isn't it? Is it really cooking? Or is that just a scary word the author is using to make me eat my vegetables?
It's actually a surprisingly and frighteningly scientifically sound metaphor.
Really? How so?
Because what is cooking, chemically speaking? In the case of an egg, cooking is a process called the denaturation of proteins. The energy from the heat causes the long, neatly folded protein chains to unfold, unravel, and then tangle up with each other into a solid, opaque mass.
And you're saying high sugar does the exact same thing to the proteins in the lens.
Over a long period of time, that process of glycation we mentioned causes a very similar chemical reaction. The proteins denature, they unfold, they tangle and clump, they solidify. So, saying the lens is cooked is a very accurate way to describe the end state of those proteins. They've undergone an irreversible transition from an organized clear state to a disorganized opaque one.
That is genuinely horrifying, but it also explains so much. It explains why you can't just blink it away or use eye drops to fix it.
Exactly, and that is the true power of this analogy. Think about that fried egg in the skillet. Once you've cooked it, can you unfry it?
No, of course not. Once it's white and solid, it's white and solid. You can't put it back in the shell and magically make it clear and liquid again.
You can melt ice back into water. You can recharge a dead battery. But you cannot uncook a protein. It's a one-way chemical reaction.
So the source is telling us, in no uncertain terms, that this damage to the lens is permanent.
The structural change, yes. Once it has happened, it's permanent. You can't change your diet and have the cataract clear up. The egg is cooked.
And the result of that cooking process is what the source describes as the final state, the frosted bathroom window.
Which brings us full circle, right back to Rose's frustrating, dim reality.
Right. So let's contrast the two states. We started with the clear window pane of a healthy lens.
Now compare that to a frosted bathroom window. Imagine you're standing in your shower, and it has one of those frosted or pebbled glass doors. You can tell if the lights are on in the bathroom, right? You can see the glow. You can tell if it's day or night.
But you can't see the details. You can't see the pattern on the towel hanging on the rack. You can't read the label on the shampoo bottle on the sink.
You just see light and shadow, form and movement. No detail, no sharp edges, no color fidelity. Just a haze.
That is the double trouble reality, living your life behind a frosted glass wall that is physically part of your own body.
It is. And for a diabetic patient, the double part of the trouble is that this often happens much earlier in life and progresses much, much faster than in a non-diabetic patient. It's an accelerated aging of the eye, fueled by sugar.
Okay. We have sat in the dimness for long enough. I think we all understand the mechanism now. The sugar cooks the proteins, the window frosts over, the world turns yellow and gray. What in the world do we do about it?
This is where we get to section 5. The actionable takeaways and solutions.
And the Force gives us a very clear checklist, a sort of self-diagnostic. And I want to run through this with you because even if you're listening and you don't have diabetes, these are critical warning signs of age-related cataracts too.
Absolutely. Awareness is always the first step to a solution.
Okay, question number 1 on the checklist. Do you need brighter and brighter lights to read?
And you have to be really honest with yourself about this. Have you started using your phone's flashlight to read menus in restaurants? Do you find yourself getting annoyed when evening comes because the whole house just feels gloomy? That's the light blockage in action.
Question number 2. Do colors look faded? And then it gives a key example. Blue socks look gray.
This is the really specific one. The next time you do laundry, pay attention. If you honestly can't tell the difference between your navy blue socks and your black socks without taking them over to a bright window, that is a massive red flag for the yellowing of the lens.
And finally, question 3. Does the world look yellow or dim?
This is the sepia filter check. Does your reality feel like it's been run through an Instagram filter from a decade ago? Does it look like that old photograph?
If you're listening and you're answering yes to one or more of these, the source has a very simple, direct call to action. It doesn't say eat more carrots. It doesn't say go buy another pair of glasses.
No. It says ask your doctor to check for cataracts.
And that phrasing is really important. Don't just go in and ask for a routine eye exam. Ask specifically about the health of the lens inside your eye.
Because as we saw with poor Rose, you can get a perfect updated prescription for glasses, and it won't help one bit if the window itself is frosted over. You need a diagnosis of the structural problem, not the refractive one.
Now, here's where the whole story takes a sudden and frankly very hopeful turn. We've just spent all this time talking about cooking the eye and permanent, irreversible damage. It sounds incredibly grim. If you can't uncook the egg, aren't you just stuck looking through that frosted window forever?
You would think so. Logically, that's where the analogy leads. But the source ends on a surprisingly high note.
Hmm.
It uses a word you almost never see in medical literature. It calls the solution a miracle.
Right. The surgery to fix this is a miracle. That is not a word you expect. Doctors usually say highly effective or the gold standard of care. But miracle, that's a strong word.
Let's go back to our egg analogy one last time to understand why they use that word.
Okay. The egg is cooked, it's white, it's solid, it's sitting in the bottom of our glass bowl.
We've firmly established you cannot turn it back into a clear liquid. So if you want to see the bottom of the bowl again, what is the only option you have left?
You have to. I guess you have to take the cooked egg out of the bowl and throw it away.
Exactly. You remove the opaque cooked egg and you replace it with, well, with a clear window.
And that is the surgery.
That is exactly what modern cataract surgery is. It is not a repair, it is a replacement.
Yeah.
An exchange.
Okay, walk me through this, because I think the very idea of eye surgery makes a lot of people, myself included, extremely squeamish.
And that's entirely normal and understandable. But the procedure itself is one of the most common and refined surgeries in the world. It's incredibly elegant. The surgeon makes a microscopic incision in the cornea. They use a tiny ultrasound probe to break up the cooked lens, all those cloudy, clumped-up proteins. Then they gently vacuum the pieces out.
So they are literally taking the old, dirty, frosted window pane out of the frame?
Yes, they remove the frosted glass entirely. And then, and this is the part that feels like a miracle, they take a brand new artificial lens, which is folded up like a tiny piece of origami. They insert it through the same tiny incision. It unfolds inside the eye, right where the old lens used to be, and it is perfectly, pristinely clear.
So you are swapping your damaged biological part for a brand new, perfect artificial part.
You are. It is essentially a bionic upgrade for your eye. And because that new artificial lens is made of a medical-grade acrylic or silicone, it's perfectly clear. It's like someone comes along and instantly Windexes the window to your soul.
Does the vision come back that quickly? Is it immediate?
For a huge number of people, the difference is immediate and profound. Patients will often sit up after the procedure, which only takes about 10-15 minutes, and their first word is, wow. They talk about the brightness of the room being almost shocking.
Because they've been living in the dark, effectively.
For years. Imagine you've been wearing a pair of dirty yellowed sunglasses for 5 or 10 years, and you suddenly take them off on a bright, sunny day at the beach. You'd squint. It would almost hurt. It's too bright. The brain has to recalibrate to all this new light flooding in.
And what about the colors, the blue socks?
The blue comes back. That is one of the most common and emotional things patients report. They'll say, I had no idea my kitchen walls were this shade of blue, or I forgot the sky was that vivid, because for the first time in years, you've taken that yellow filter off.
So the gray socks literally turn back into blue socks right before your eyes.
They do. Reality, in its full color spectrum, is restored.
That really does feel like a miracle. It's not just fixing a broken bone. It's restoring a primary sense that had been slowly, sneakily stolen from you.
And here's the best part. Unlike your original biological lens, the new artificial one can't get a cataract. It's made of a material that can't be cooked by high blood sugar in the same way. It is, for all intents and purposes, a permanent fix.
Which just highlights why recognizing those early symptoms, the frustration, the needle test, the socks, is so incredibly important. You do not have to just accept living in that old photograph.
You don't. Rose in the story probably spent years getting more and more frustrated with her dirty windows. She didn't have to live that way. The solution was there all along. But she first needed to identify the right problem.
So we have gone on quite a journey here today. We started with Grandma Rose scrubbing her perfectly clean windows, completely frustrated that the world still looked dirty and dim.
And we realized that her dirty windows were actually a physical biological change happening inside her own eye, the double trouble of diabetes cooking the proteins in her lens.
We looked at the physics of why her blue socks were turning gray and why she needed a spotlight just to do her sewing.
We went deep into the anatomy, that perfect military formation of proteins, and how excess sugar acts just like heat, cooking the lens like an egg white until it's solid and opaque.
And finally, we saw the way out. The modern miracle of simply swapping that cooked, frosted lens for a brand new, perfectly clear one.
It's a complete narrative arc, from confusion and frustration to a deep understanding of the mechanism, and finally, to a clear solution.
As we wrap this up, I'm left with one big final thought, and it goes all the way back to the very beginning of the source material.
And what's that?
It's about that dirty window perception. Rose was so utterly convinced the problem was the house, that the problem was her glasses, that the problem was external to her.
It's the human condition, isn't it, to project?
Exactly. We project our internal state onto the external world. If I'm feeling sad, the world looks gloomy and gray. If I'm feeling joyful, the world seems bright and vibrant. And if I have a cataract, the world actually, physically, looks dim and yellow.
It's a powerful reminder to question our own baseline. When the world seems to be failing us, when the lights in every room seem too low, when the colors on TV seem too dull, we need to have the courage to stop and ask a different question. Is the world changing? Or am I?
It requires a lot of humility to ask that question, to turn the focus inward and say, maybe I'm the one with the filter.
It does. But as we saw today with Rosa's story, asking that question is the first and most critical step to getting your sight and your vibrant reality back.
So the next time you're doing laundry,
Here we go, back to the socks.
take a good, hard look at those socks under a bright light. And if you are holding what you think is a black sock and your partner or your friend insists that it's navy blue, don't argue with them.
Call your eye doctor.
Call your eye doctor. It might be the most important call you make all year.
And maybe, lay off the sugar a little bit too. Keep those proteins in their perfect formation for as long as you can.
Solid advice all around. That's it for this deep dive into the double trouble. We hope you see things a little more clearly now.
See you next time.